Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's bet on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today? Got a lovely little interview for you between Lauren and Bryan. I know, so sad. So sad they went home. I mean, they were just, man, they were kicking butt. So before we get into this interview, for some reason, when it got recorded, not by me, but by the producers that run this whole thing, when they did the recording of this, it cut out the beginning of the question that was posed to Lauren and Bryan. So you're going to have to roll with it from there. We're going to take off from that point.
That's a great question. In comparison to the windmill challenge, which had so many technical requirements, this challenge had very few. So it really was just build a puppet that had at least one moving part. There were no size requirements, which is why you saw the variance in the size of the puppets.
No hints, nothing.
There were no suggestions or anything. It was very much just build a puppet and make something move. So we had that going in, but you're right. As you mentioned, there was a lot that went into the performing aspect. So we were each given a script that we had to fully memorize and perform. The script was also taped behind the stage there if we had the time to look, which nobody did. So
you were too busy doing what you had to do for the show.
So we all memorized the script fully. And in the script, there were both scripted moments, which you hear. I think the one scripted moment you really hear is with Caleb and Jacob and Mark and Steven, the whole thing about VIP, all of that was like part of the script. And then there were moments in the script that allowed for improv. And in those improv moments, you got to show off your special skill, which was something that was also recommended by the judges, as your puppet should have some sort of special skill that it could do. And so for our puppet, it was that it could play fetch. So we created a little tennis ball, we had
that was a bedazzled, bejeweled tennis ball because she's a princess.
Yes, it was a bejeweled tennis ball, exactly. So that was really where we got to have fun with it, got to improvise a little bit and kind of do our own thing. But other than that, we were really just following the script. And then at the end, both of our puppets could come together
and they had to do something together at the end. And so what we ended up doing was that we sang a song with Natalie and Michelle, and we got to have a really close relationship with Natalie and Michelle throughout this experience. And we all wrote a song together backstage, and we're trying to figure out lyrics that we could do and what would sound good. And we wanted to end it with teaching people that the plural of Lego is Lego. So that was a fun ending. If you listen back to the song, and we were like singing it backstage.
We were loving it. I mean, Natalie has a musical background, and I play piano, so we were both kind of going back and forth with musical ideas. Lauren's done musical theater. So for all of us, this just felt like the right thing.
It was really, we had the most fun with it.
So I know this is a long-winded answer to your question, but basically the performance aspect of it did have a lot of things that were suggested. Improvisation for your special skill, and then at the end your puppets come together and you either each do your special skill or you do just something together that shows off what your puppets can do.
That's super helpful, thank you. I saw enough of that, it just really made me want to ask the question. So you mentioned details on things that weren't seen, especially at the beginning of the season when there's 12 teams and you get to see everybody's build for like 30 seconds, if that, on the show. And we know you had some fabulous builds. Are there some details that didn't show on TV on your builds that we should know about?
Definitely.
Yes. There are a few. I think maybe we can run through them, starting with, we won't do this for every episode, but there were a few. So for episode 1, that was our sibling storytime build where we built that huge Rapunzel tower. But really the core of that build was that it all started with a little minifigure scene in the bottom corner of the build that didn't really get shown. And that minifigure scene was of our mom reading us a bedtime story. And then that story is coming to life out of this giant storybook at the back of the float. So it's like we're hearing this story as little minifigure kids, and then the story is coming to life out of the float.
Yeah, and you actually see our minifig mom holding a little blue book, and that was supposed to connect to the blue book that we built to have the story come to life. And it was a tribute to our parents helping us be creative by telling us stories, and that whole story wasn't shown in the episode, and it was something that was really meaningful to us. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you for asking that.
And then
let's see, what
episode 3.
Episode
you want to talk
3?
about that one?
Do it.
That one was so fun. That we had a story about our birthday cakes. It was the Tower Earthquake episode. And we are big storytellers, and we wanted a reason for why we were building a big cake. It couldn't just be that we were building a big cake that shakes. No, there had to be a story. So we created a story about Georgina the Giant. And so every year the royal bakers make an extremely amazing big cake for her, but every year she's so excited that this giant comes bounding in and the cake topples over because of all the shaking. And so we wanted to be the royal bakers that can make a cake that can withstand Georgina's excitement. And so that's why it's shaking, is because the giant princess is ready.
And not only that, but the royal chefs prepared the cake with all of Georgina's favorites, one of which includes human, aka minifigure sprinkles, all attached to the side.
Yes.
Little munchable sprinkles just for Georgina the Giant.
So we had so fun. We love fantasy. So we were thinking of the land of giants and to have this giant princess get all her little human minifig sprinkles. And I spent quite a bit of time digging in those minifig head bins to find every terrified face. Yeah. And it took quite some time to find every little scared face. To
every single minifig is going like,
everyone has a distinct personality. Some were taken from the beach and have a crab and a lobster with their hands. Like, I gave them all personalities.
Yeah, so that one was a blast for us. Fun. And I'd say the only other one where I think the story pretty much comes across, but for our derby car, which was another one which was more focused on strength, and kind of the stories of the builds didn't quite make their way into the episode. We built Beware the Bull, and the story there is that this bull has stolen the matador's cape and is wearing it into the arena. So that cape that's flying off the back of the bull is stolen from the matador, and it has all of the intricate gold stylings. So I think between those 3, we've kind of covered the stories where maybe they didn't get fully covered in the episodes.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you. What a great answer. I love the stories that you bring, but I love hearing these backstories as well. And I'm sure our readers will too. Last question for me, hopefully relatively quick, so I can pass it on to the other folks.
Yeah.
You got to interact with Brickmaster Amy and Jamie. What was it like working with those Lego legends there on the set?
Yeah, it's great. They were so instrumental in guiding our build process. I feel like, they speak to us for every challenge, right? And only some of them get shown. But every single challenge, they came to us with this really valuable advice for how to tighten our stories, how to change our builds. For some examples, just really quickly, in the first challenge, Jamie told us to add some peril for our prince character hanging off the ledge. So we added these spiky brambles around the base. And for the Phoenix challenge, they talked to us about how to pose the Phoenix, hat challenge, for which we built a Phoenix hat. They talked to us about how to pose the Phoenix so it'd be more striking and more hat-like. So they were just always there offering really valuable guidance for not only a storytelling perspective, but also how to make your build really fit the challenge that you were building to. So they were great.
Really helpful, honestly. They were really great to me, and they have so much wisdom, and they really do want to help you. They are there to try and make you build the best thing you can build.
Right. And I just loved seeing Jamie just like nerd out over the little details.
He freaked out in first episode when we had our prince rotating, obviously moving, and Jamie goes, I honestly don't know how you did that. And that was one of the best ones. We were like, Jamie was technical, and we're not technical. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that
was a cool moment that didn't make the final show.
Everything, and so he'll notice something and be like, I have never seen that done before, and so it's really cool to get that feedback.
They were awesome.
Yeah.
What an awesome compliment, and I think I took up more than my fair share of time, but thank you so much. I appreciate all your builds, and I will hand it off to the next person.
Good.
Thank you.
Bryan and Lauren, so excited to talk to you again, but obviously I wish it was under different circumstances. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was at the end of the episode, Bryan, you had said that you wanted to bring imagination and joy to all the builds and tell stories. And I'm curious to know if that was something that you found during the competition, or was that something you went in with? Just tell us a little bit more about kind of some of that mission that you sort of told us about at the end.
Absolutely. And first off, I just want to say, Michael, we love your podcast. Thank you so much for all of the insight that you bring every week for the episodes. It's really great.
It really is.
Thank you.
and to answer your question, we are storytellers. That is such a foundational part of what we want to do with Lego and what we want to do with our lives. We love telling stories and just bringing these imaginative, colorful worlds to life. And so with the unlimited opportunities of 5 million bricks in the brick pit, this was like the perfect chance to tell as many stories as we possibly could in the time that we got on Lego Masters. So I think that was really one of our missions. We're storytellers. So even if it was a technical challenge, even if it was a strength challenge, we tried our best to put as much story as we possibly could into every single build. And that's something that we're hoping can last, and hopefully what was enjoyable for people who watch the show.
Well, perfect. One of the other things I feel like you guys were known for was a lot of the small details. I'm thinking especially back to the, underwater dance party, all those different elements used to make all the different fish. Talk to us a little bit about working the brick pit to find all the small pieces. Because I can appreciate how you build a cake, a bunch of pink pieces or a bunch of blue pieces, but how do you do the small things under the time crunch? I'd love to get your perspective.
A lot of running back and forth, and sometimes as well asking other contestants if they know where something is. Likewise, they would ask us if we knew where something is. Everyone was very helpful, but I would say it was a lot of just getting used to where pieces were and a lot of trial and error. And it's interesting to think about now, to put myself back in that brick pit, and I can actually picture where different things were. But I'd say a lot of, we tried to have a lot of creative parts usage in what we found. And for instance, in the second build, when I was working on that lily pad flower, I really tried to be inspired by just what I was seeing in the brick pit and to grab those pieces and then to just build it with what I found. And so I think sometimes we would get inspired by bricks we would actually find in the brick pit to use in our builds, because there was so many, it was so vast that we would get inspired by finding new pieces there. Yeah. What do you think, Bryan?
I totally agree. I think there were two approaches that you could take to something like this. There was the time crunch or the necessity, where you stick to your guns, you go right to the bricks that you know are there. You're not searching, you just know exactly what you're looking for. So we did that a lot. I mean, I love to sculpt, and I'm very comfortable with traditional bricks and sculpting round curved shapes with that. So if we were in a pinch and we needed to create something that was curved or rounded, I knew that was a go-to. But then there were other times, like you mentioned with building the undersea world, where it's like Lauren said, we would just go to the brick pit and just look around and be like, these kind of look like a lobster's scales, or, these kind of look like a clam, and you just find parts that work. So it's really two strategies, but it really depends on how much of a time crunch you're in and what you're most comfortable with at the time.
And just to add one other little thing that I just thought of actually in episode 1, because that was the first episode when we were getting used to the brick pit. And I remember we couldn't find pieces that we needed. And so in the end, to attach our book on a diagonal. Do you remember this? To attach our book on a diagonal in the back, we ended up having to use little jumper plates and very strategically place them and put our finger on to try and figure out exactly how we could get them to line up so the book would sit diagonally and also be strong enough to move on.
So many cases of that, where you're like, you know the part.
Yes.
And then you either can't find it or it's not there. Yeah. And it's just like, okay.
And you're like, well, I don't have time. I just got to go with what I can find and just try and do this because you're on a time crunch. So there were cases like that. And then afterwards, we'd be talking to other contestants. They'd be like, oh no, those pieces are kind of in this area. Like that's where you'll find it next time. So yeah, it was a time.
That's perfect. And then the last thing I'll say is, at the end of the episode, you really talked a lot about how, from the very beginning, doing Lego together was so important, coming off the experience and especially watching it back, what did this experience mean to you both to be able to do it together?
It was so special. I mean, Lauren and I have been building together for a really long time, and just to see what we could do when we were pushed to our absolute limits, in both endurance and in our building ability, doing these crazy challenges we could never have imagined doing. and just to see how Lauren rose to the occasion so amazingly and built all
and
these
same
incredible
with you
things.
though. I mean, it was definitely, it's like a test. It's a really extreme test, and it's building on new levels and new ways we never have before, and such an extreme pressure. And I think it's something that we're always going to remember for our whole life and cherish. So we went on this crazy adventure and built these things we can be so proud of. And it's been like a whirlwind watching it back.
It's so great to do it with family, with people that you feel so close to and you're so comfortable with. You have this telepathy where you just know what the other person's thinking. We had a moment, just for a little quick sidebar, we had a moment on set where Will called our mom while we were on set, and that was something that was so great because she got to talk about our interaction as kids. Will was like, "What do you do when they're acting out? How do you punish them?" You know, and Will was like asking
at the end, he asked who the favorite child was. It was hilarious. It was episode 5.
So funny. So we're a Lego family. We go to Legoland. We all love it. And so to have this experience with Lauren, to have that moment with our mom, you know, involved too, it felt like this culmination of this lifetime of being a Lego family and loving this creative outlet for so long.
And we hope it inspires other families to do the same and build together. And I think it was a really great experience all in all.
Well, we had a lot of fun watching you, and thanks again for all your support of the podcast.
Of course.
Thank you.
Well, hello. I'm filling in for the Bricks King podcast this week, so hello, everyone. Nice to meet you, Bryan and Lauren. Thank you for being on the show and adding your personal touches to the cast and whatnot. Matt didn't give me any direction here, so I actually have a couple of questions for y'all today. With, you know, you have all these different challenges over the weeks, and, you know, working as a team is incredibly important. And I know you two are pretty in sync when it comes to the building challenges and whatnot, but out of curiosity, was there ever a point during any of the challenges where there was a disagreement on a particular color scheme to go with for a build?
A color scheme specifically. Yeah, so I think color is something we think a lot about, you know, like just in every challenge, we want to have bright, bold colors that are contrasting and that stand out. And I think really the only challenge where we kind of ran into trouble with our usual color chemistry was in the turbine challenge, in the bricking wind challenge. And in that challenge, we kind of had this conception that we would build something where the characters would really be allowed to pop. You know, we would have these bright colored characters, we'd have a bright colored turbine, and that would kind of speak for itself. And we got some guidance from the Brickmasters that they wanted to see, you know, just a really bright, colorful world. And, you know, that we kind of had to adjust our plan, and we ended up just kind of making it this colorful kelp forest that, you know, and I think that was something where we just, because it wasn't in our original plan, I think that was one where we struggled with adapting and like figuring out how do you work color in when we already kind of had our colors planned out. If that makes
after
sense.
you spend a good 5 hours building some rocks, it can be like, do we get rid of them?
Do we ditch them?
We did
think about that. We were like, do we ditch the rocks? And Lauren was kind of like, no, I worked so hard
on hours for those, and I tried to make it so realistic.
So that was the one. When it comes to color, that's the
and
one.
And we both agreed with that, though. In the end, we both felt very on the same page after we talked about it after the episode.
Well, that actually kind of factors into the next question that I had on here, and maybe this is the same challenge answer, but if you could have 2 extra hours onto any of the challenges, whether it was the most recent one or, like you said, the turbine, which build do you think would have benefited the most from it? Or like, was there a mechanic that you would want to rework with those 2 hours? Curious to know.
I have a definite answer for this.
Tell me, because I think I wonder if it's going to be what I'm thinking you're going to say.
Hanging brick.
Yeah, I knew it.
That is by far the one we are the most strapped for time. And we had this idea, you know, and we were really excited to execute it, and it ended up taking so much longer than we thought to create that cloud. That like fluffy cloud design just really took a long time, and we didn't anticipate it. So that cut into kind of everything else, you know, like I made sure I worked on those like rainbow things along the side and made sure I had time for that. But other than that, like we had to let some things kind of fall through the cracks on that one. So we would have smoothed out some of the edges around the cloud on the bottom. We would have, our tower broke and we didn't have time to rebuild it.
And I think,
we had that crystal palace. We would have had that be much taller. And I think I would have went back and done some more work on the characters. Anyway, that just that one, far and away was the one we ran out of time with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, awesome. And I see that y'all have a few sets behind you there. You're a Lego family and whatnot, but being on the show under that amount of pressure, it can sometimes change your perspective on the hobby and the craft. So do you still enjoy building as much as you did before the show, during, after? How do you feel about the brick now?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I mean, I think we're still building sets all the time for sure. I've been doing a lot of mocks as well, having fun with all the mini builds for every challenge to kind of relive some of that. I think I'm yet to delve into like a big mock project, because there's something about it feels almost a little bit too close after the show and having to do these epic projects every single week where I can only like wrap my head around small things right now. I don't know if you feel the same.
For sure. There's definitely a bit of anxiety with the idea of building something really big, because it puts you back in that world of the just high stress and time pressure. For sure. It's been
I remember like working with the mini builds and thinking like, oh, this is so nice, we can like use a bunch of 1x1. It's like you don't have
building on such a big scale.
Everything doesn't have to be massive. So I think that's where I'm at.
And I think that's kind of a fun tidbit that we've talked about in a few things before we can just add in, is that like we were used to building on more of a smaller scale because Lego is expensive and it's hard to build on such a big scale on your own. And so most of these challenges that we actually did on the show is the first time we've ever built to that scale before. So it really is.
Every single one is bigger than anything we had ever built.
So it's building with a whole new mind space and just having to figure out how things are. And I think that was something.
We were joking, like, I can't remember the last time we used a 2x4 brick.
Yeah, literally.
It was just like, with the type of small stuff that we typically do, it's just not very common. But on Lego Masters, that's your bread and butter. So,
Awesome. Well, I'm sure whenever you decide to build big again, or combine your skills together, it'll be majestic. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, great. So you've already alluded to this a little bit, I guess, in some of the comments you made and some of the comments you made on the last episode. But you've said that you guys have been building together for a really long time, that you played together as kids. I think that that's one of the things that made you guys really relatable on the show, because a lot of us have similar experiences. So I guess I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on your Lego story, how you got into the hobby. Did you have favorite themes growing up? Maybe if you went through a dark age, stuff like that.
Yeah,
for sure. You can start because it started with you.
I'll kick it off. Yeah, I'm the older brother. So the Lego started with me when I was 3 years old, and I got a little town minifigure set from my dad. And it was just the best thing I had ever seen. I lost one of the minifigures, and it was the first tantrum I ever threw.
And that is a story that gets told a lot. It's memorable.
It is memorable. But yeah, so that was kind of my start with it. I started building my own stuff probably by age 4. And then when Lauren was born and she was old enough to start building with bricks, I brought her into the hobby. Favorite themes. We have a lot to talk about with this. We'll try to keep it brief. I grew up Johnny Thunder, huge fan, dressed up as Johnny Thunder as a kid, literally wore a cardboard box and styrofoam pants and a painted lipstick mustache. And was
he
Johnny
won a
Thunder.
Competition at Legoland for wearing that costume.
So Johnny Thunder was a big deal. That was probably the earliest theme that I remember being hooked on. And then I was very much of the generation when the first licensed sets came out. So when Star Wars landed, when Harry Potter landed, I was a young kid. And so that was just perfect. I got every single one. And I was just kind of off to the races. And then I'm just kind of doing my own journey, and then Lauren can get into hers.
I'll type
I'll just give the cliff notes. And then the Dark Ages didn't really happen. I went through a phase where I got really into this platform called Little Big Planet on PS3, which is almost like Lego building, but on the PS3. And so I was really into that, and that was kind of more my thing in middle school than Lego. But then once that had its time, and then it was back to Lego.
And then they did the Lord of the Rings launch.
That's really the thing. I mean, I never had a Dark Ages, but when they brought that Lord of the Rings line out, I was like, the rest was history. I was like, this is the coolest thing that has ever happened ever before. So that was big. And I mean, just been building all the time.
So for me, I was, I think 3 when I got my first set, and that was a little Belleville set. And so Belleville is now since a discontinued line for Lego, and it was geared more towards, I'd say, girls at the time. There's a lot of fairy tale themed sets, and I absolutely loved those. I had them and continued to get sets of them up until the time they were discontinued. Absolutely adored them. They're my favorite. Heartbroken that they're gone.
We built a lot of those together too.
Yeah,
we would. Belleville sets.
We built a lot together, and then we also spent so much time playing all the Lego video games together. That was a big thing we would do. Lego Star Wars, Lego Indiana Jones, Lego Batman, Lego Lord of the Rings. There's more Lego Pirates. Loved them. Played a lot of that together. And then, as we mentioned before, we've grown up going to Legoland a lot as well. We're about a 45-minute drive from there. So a lot of just spending time in kind of a Lego community with our family and with each other. And
we'd see the builds at Legoland and then go home and try to recreate them at home, especially those mini land figures. If you're familiar with those at Legoland, I'm sure you know. They're very popular online too.
And there used to be a workshop in the back and Bryan would have some of his things displayed there. As kids, you could build and have your builds displayed, and just, I'd say, a whole kind of accumulation of our childhood together. So much to do with Lego.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if you could have designed a challenge for the show that really played to your strengths, what would that have looked like?
Absolutely. I mean, so I have to think of something on the spot. We know for sure that it would have been a storytelling based challenge. We actually, when watching season 1, a lot of the challenges we saw in that season really, we felt would have played to our strengths. That movie genres challenge, oh my goodness, we love that. And, you know, in this season, one of our favorite challenges was the Hero Shot Challenge, which was kind of movie related, tell a story, you know. When we get to kind of wrap our hands around that and get into that storytelling mode, that's when we thrive. So I'd say if we got to do that movie genres challenge in season 1, and if we got to meet the directors of the Lego movie, I probably would have fainted, but it would have been really cool. So I think, watching that season, we just really saw a lot of ourselves in the type of things that we like to build. And then season 2 had some of that, but also a lot of technical stuff.
Yeah,
and it's a
lot more
thing,
technical challenges, which we weren't anticipating. We were anticipating obviously things much more similar to season 1.
That's true.
And season 2 is like a whole different ballgame.
Whole different thing.
Yeah.
So we did storytelling where we could.
Yes, exactly. We tried to bring it in everything.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of leads into my final question then. If you could give advice to your past selves before you got on the show, what would you tell yourself going in?
Get really good at Technic. Every single challenge. Neither of us are Technic builders. That's just not in our wheelhouse. We like to build things that are very aesthetically pleasing, and the function is kind of secondary. So that was not the vibe for season 2 necessarily. It was very much a Technic build centered thing for the episodes that we got to experience. So every episode we just ran straight to the Technic bin, and we're just figuring it out. I'm learning how a lot of these Technic connections even work to begin with. I'm finding parts I'd never seen before. So that would have been the advice, I think. Do you feel, I don't know, what do you feel?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate, but I got to give it to Bryan. Actually, one other thing that didn't make the final cut of the show that just made me think of was in the memory build. We actually got second place for the Lamborghini, which they didn't show. Yeah. And Bryan really did that one well. And I was really not very helpful. I was really stressed out with building that car. And Bryan, who's also not a Technic builder, was like, well, of course we have to do it. So let's do it. And I was like, okay. So, and that's another thing I think just that I would tell myself is just go for it, and which we did, is just keep moving forward, which we really had to work on, but just to remind yourself that you can do this, you're creative, you can keep moving forward even when you feel stumped.
Yeah, that's great advice to any Lego Masters contestants. Just whatever you're doing, just commit to it and go all in. You know, it's kind of like what Will was saying to Caleb and Jacob in this last episode. Whatever you're going to do with your story, just commit. And I think Lego Masters encourages that as well. You know, you just really have to go all in on either creating your idea or selling your idea. If it's something that you are not sure about, it's just you have to commit. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'll pass it on to the next person.
Of course. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for talking with us. First question, I'm surprised no one else mentioned this. What was it like interacting with Billy the Puppet on set?
That's amazing.
We loved Billy.
Honestly, this episode was the most fun we ever had during a build challenge, during probably a whole challenge. There was just such a fun air to the room. I think because there was so much laughter going on. Billy was hilarious. Him and Will had the best rapport. We had a great time when they came to our table.
It was so fun. I think I don't think they covered in the episode, but the puppeteer for Billy was the puppeteer for Kermit, for currently Kermit the Frog. So he's a big deal.
Yes, he is a legend.
That was really cool.
Yeah, and he was so
nice.
He was so fun and really collaborative, really wanted to meet us and know about the builds. And I think him and Will just had an absolute blast together.
We've never seen Will having so much fun.
So much fun.
Loving it. Because I think it's something that Will has talked about, because he's doing improv all the time, and none of us have done improv as the builders, so we're all just kind of trying to play along and make it work. But it was Will getting to improv with somebody who does improv. So it was felt like he was really loving it and in his zone.
It was so funny. And they were doing a little improv with us. So they were trying to one up each other for who could take us out to something fancier. I think Billy was I'll take you guys out for a cup of coffee. And I was like, well, I'll take you guys out to dinner. And Billy goes, I'm gonna take you guys out to a 5-star resort. And they were one-upping each other. And eventually Will walked off. It was hilarious.
It was who could be the best host?
Who could be the best host?
So they were the best host offers the contestants
the most.
At the end. To offer you a private island.
I was just crying laughing. It was so funny. And you see them doing their little tap dancing. Yeah. And it was just such a great time on set with them.
Just happy vibes.
And we were so excited. And this is, we had a guest on the show, which we didn't know if it was going to happen or not. And so this was really exciting.
This had that buzzy energy that I imagine in season one, which had, the guests attending the set, maybe had some of that. We didn't have any guests in the episodes that we were in actually come to the set. Yeah. And so to have this guest was really exciting.
It was really exciting. Yeah.
Awesome. So when you were talking about that, you kind of mentioned some things that didn't make it into the final cut. Were there any other fun moments during the season that didn't make it that you want to talk about?
Let's see. I think the big one, as we mentioned before, was when Will called our mom on set. That was so fun for us. It was brought out Lauren's phone.
Yeah, and I called my mom, and I remember I was like, I don't know if she's gonna pick up or not, and she picked up. And I just go, "Hi, Mom, you're on Lego Masters. Here's Will," and I just handed the phone
Will just
straight
grabs
to
the phone and goes, "Hi, Margie."
He told him her name, and from that point on, that was kind of his bit with us, which sadly got cut, and so he would often be acting like he was part of our family and be asking how Margie is.
He was like, "I'm so proud of you. Your mom's proud of you." It was like his bit with us for the entire rest of the time we were on the show.
And of course, heartbroken that didn't make it in, but we have our memories of it. And it was so fun to live with it.
That was a blast.
So fun.
Will and I had this running gag too about me being in a blazer all the time, and how we're both in blazers, and I was Blazer Brian.
Yeah. Because Brian doesn't wear blazers.
I don't wear blazers.
so that was a good...
And Will caught on to that very quickly, and so it continued to mess with me about it. And so one time I took the blazer off on camera, and Will was like, "No, put it back. We can't look at that." It was just
we always had a blast with Will. Always so much laughter. He was so funny. Yeah. And then I know there was one time actually in the last episode we partnered up with Natalie and Michelle, and Will was talking he was trying to have us practice our puppets together with each other, and he goes, "Well, are you guys friends in real life?" We go, "Yeah, the four of us actually have a group chat, we've gotten really close, we all talk all the time." And he goes, "Are you serious? I'm really touched by that." Oh my gosh. And we were like, "Yeah, we're actually friends." And he was really touched by the fact we've actually really bonded through this experience.
We are to this day. We're close with.
We're gonna call Michelle later.
We're gonna call Michelle a little bit. We're just super close with all the other contestants.
Yeah, all 24 of us still talk every day.
Really strong friendships on this show.
Awesome. Last question. What is next for you both on your Lego journeys?
That's a great question. So I think next for us, I don't want to totally speak for you, but I feel like collectively we both are new to the convention scene and the expo scene, and we are so excited to get to be a part of it. Like that just seems like an awesome world that we really want to explore. We're in California, so we're really excited for Bricks LA coming up, and we're just going to try to get to as many as we can and meet fellow AFOLs and just really get into the community and now have this way where we can just be a part of it, and we have our community of friends from this show that we can attend with, and it seems like something that feels like the next step for us in our Lego journey.
It's going to be really exciting. I think it's going to be so fun to reconnect with all of our friends from the show and to meet so many other incredible builders, and it's going to be a blast. And then besides that, we're actually headed to Legoland this next weekend, which will be fun. So that'll be a good time. But I think, conventions is going to be the biggest thing. Yeah.
And with those conventions, I'm going to have to start building big again, because we're going to build some awesome stuff to show there. So we'll be bringing it.
All right. Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Well, that was cool. I actually got to experience this just like you guys as a listener instead of an interviewer. As I was editing this, and I want to give a huge shout out to Brian Saviano, Bricks O'Brien. If you don't know who he is, go follow him for stepping in, because it was chaotic. This was the first week back at school, and usually these things take place at 4 p.m. my time here in the Central Time Zone, and there was no way I was going to be able to make it. And he just, I was like, hey, there's questions, and he's a great interviewer. So it wasn't a big deal. It was a simple decision to bring Brian in to help me out. And I really do appreciate everything he did. On the other side of that, I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. Lauren and Bryan have a lot to share, a lot of interesting insight to be able to give to potential Lego Lego Masters contestants, or just builders in general. I mean, they come at it from a different experience than a lot of other people do, but then at the same time, they are still, contestants on a show that they did really well. They went fairly deep into the show. So you gotta be proud of that and everything that they accomplished. So yeah. Anyway, we are moving along until next week. We've got new show, another episode with Lego Masters stuff, and then the whoever is going to be booted off afterwards. So until then, I'm your Minifigure host, Matt. Let's build on it.